I died. My sister's heel was the last thing I felt, sharp and deliberate against my ribs as I lay crumpled at the bottom of our childhood staircase. The paramedics said it was an accident, a tragic fall, but I'd seen her face in that final moment, backlit by the hallway light, her mouth curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. The last thing I heard was her voice on the phone. Yes, I'll accept the publishing deal for my novel. Yes, that's right, I wrote it. Then darkness, then light. Then I was 23 again, sitting in my cramped studio apartment in Queens, staring at my laptop screen where the final sentence of my manuscript blinked at me. The cursor pulsed like a heartbeat. My hands shook as I reached for my phone, checked the date. March 15th, 2019. 3 years before my death. 3 years before Echoes of Tomorrow would be published under Melissa Chen's name, my perfect, poised, connected older sister who'd never written more than a grocery list in her life. 3 years before that book would become a cultural phenomenon, spawning a film deal, a television series, and enough money to buy the kind of life I'd only ever dreamed about. 3 years before I would die for it. I sat there for 6 hours, not moving, barely breathing. My studio apartment was exactly as I remembered it. The water stain on the ceiling shaped like a dog, the radiator that clanked at 3 a.m., the view of the brick wall next door. Everything was familiar and strange at the same time, like watching a movie of my own life. My mind raced through every moment of those lost 3 years, every small cruelty that had accumulated like poison in my veins. The way Melissa had found my manuscript on my laptop when she came to visit in June of 2019. The way she'd asked so many questions, claimed she was just curious about my little hobby. The way I'd been so desperate for her approval, so pathetically grateful that my glamorous older sister was taking an interest in my work, that I'd told her everything. The plot, the characters, the twist ending I'd been so proud of. The way she'd copied the entire file while I was in the shower, thinking I wouldn't notice the extra few minutes she'd spent checking her email on my laptop. In my first life, I hadn't known until it was too late. She'd submitted it under her name to the big publishing houses in September 2019, the ones with the connections I didn't have. Used her marketing job at a prestigious firm, her network of influencers and tastemakers, her carefully cultivated image as a sophisticated creative professional. By the time I'd found out, January 2020, when she'd casually mentioned over dim sum that she'd gotten a book deal, she already had an agent, a contract, a launch date. When I'd confronted her, she'd laughed. Actually laughed. We'd been in her apartment, the sleek 2-bedroom in Brooklyn that our parents had helped her buy. She'd been drinking champagne, celebrating. "You have no proof you wrote it," she'd said, swirling the golden liquid in her glass. "Your computer crashed in November, remember? Lost everything. And who would believe you anyway?" Poor little Wei, always jealous of her successful big sister. She'd been right. I'd had no proof, no witnesses, no early drafts backed up anywhere because I'd been too naive, too trusting, too stupid to think my own sister would steal from me. Our parents had sided with her immediately. "Stop this nonsense, Wei," our mother had said, her voice sharp with disappointment. "You're embarrassing yourself. Embarrassing us. Melissa would never do such a thing. She's always been the creative one in the family." Always been the creative one. As if the hundreds of stories I'd written since childhood meant nothing. As if the writing prizes I'd won in high school were just flukes. As if I hadn't spent every spare moment of my life pouring my soul onto the page while Melissa had been out shopping and networking and building her personal brand. I'd tried to sue. God, I'd tried. Spent my meager savings on a legal aid attorney who'd looked at my case and shaken his head. Without proof of authorship, this is a he said, she said situation. And your sister has a contract with a major publisher. You have nothing. I'd tried to go public. Posted on social media about the theft. Within 24 hours, Melissa's lawyer had served me with a cease and desist. Within a week, she'd filed for a restraining order, claiming I was harassing her, threatening her, making her fear for her safety. The judge had granted it. 300 feet. I couldn't come within 300 feet of my own sister. The lawsuit had been dismissed. The restraining order had cost me my job. Hard to work at a marketing agency when you're making news for stalking your successful sister. I'd been evicted when I couldn't make rent. My friends had slowly drifted away, uncomfortable with my obsession, believing Melissa's version of Events, because why would someone successful and put together lie about something like this? The last 3 years of my first life had been a slow descent into hell while I watched my sister rise on the wings of my words. She'd been on the Today Show, Good Morning America, NPR's Fresh Air. The book had debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. The film rights had sold for $2 million. She'd moved to a penthouse in Manhattan, started dating a movie producer, lived the life I'd dreamed of while I'd scraped by on food stamps and the charity of former friends. And then, when I'd finally worked up the courage to confront her one last time, showing up at our parents' house for Sunday dinner despite the restraining order, desperate to make them see the truth. She'd followed me when I'd left early, unable to stomach watching her bask in praise for my work. "You need to let this go," she'd said on the stairs. We'd been alone. Everyone else was still in the dining room. "It's my book, Melissa. My words, my life. It's my book now, and you need to accept that." I'd turned to leave, started down the stairs, and felt her hand on my back, just a push, quick, hard, then falling, the world spinning, the impact, the darkness. Now I had a choice. I could do it all differently this time, hide my work better, publish first, protect myself, or I could do something more satisfying. I stood up from my desk, legs cramping from 6 hours of sitting motionless, walked to my tiny kitchen, made tea with shaking hands, stared out the window at the brick wall. In my previous life, I'd been reactive, defensive, always one step behind Melissa's machinations. This time would be different. This time, I would let her steal it. I know how that sounds, but hear me out. Over the next 2 weeks, I didn't just polish that manuscript, I transformed it. I poured in everything I'd learned from watching my book succeed in someone else's hands. The marketing, angles that had resonated with readers, the character adjustments that critics had loved, the pacing tweaks that had made it unput-downable, according to reviews. I incorporated feedback from book clubs I'd lurked in online during my first life, watching people discuss my stolen work. I refined the prose until every sentence sang. I made it perfect, better than perfect. I made it into the book that had sold 2 million copies and counting. But more importantly, I prepared for war. On March 30th, 2019, I walked into the offices of Joe and Associates, a boutique intellectual property law firm in Midtown. The receptionist looked at me skeptically. I was wearing my best outfit, which was a J. Crew dress I'd gotten on sale 3 years ago and shoes from Target. I clearly didn't look like their usual clientele. "I have an appointment with Margaret Joe," I said. "Name?" "Chen Wei." She checked her computer, eyebrows rising slightly. "Go ahead, third door on the left." Margaret Joe's office was exactly what you'd expect from a lawyer who charged $800 an hour. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Bryant Park, modern art on the walls, furniture that probably cost more than my annual rent. Margaret herself was in her 50s, impeccably dressed in a slate gray suit, her hair pulled back in a severe bun that somehow made her look more formidable. "Ms. Chen," she said, gesturing to a chair, "you said on the phone you needed help with copyright protection." "I need help setting a trap." Her eyebrows rose. "Explain." I did. I told her everything, omitting only the rebirth part. I framed it as a strong suspicion, a pattern of behavior I'd observed. My sister had always taken what was mine, boyfriends, job opportunities, even my identity at times. She was desperate for creative success but had no talent of her own. I had a completed manuscript that I knew she would covet, and I wanted to let her take it, but in a way that would destroy her when the truth came out. Margaret listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment. "This will be expensive," she finally said. "I know. You'll need to be patient. Let the theft happen. Watch her profit from your work while you wait for the right moment to strike." "I know. And when you do strike, it will destroy your relationship with your family. Permanently." "They already chose her over me," I said quietly. "Or they will. They always do." Margaret studied me. I met her gaze steadily. "All right," she said. "Let's build a trap." Over the next 3 weeks, Margaret and I crafted something beautiful, a contract so airtight that God himself couldn't break it. We worked through every scenario, every loophole, every possible angle Melissa or her future publisher might try to exploit. The contract had several key components. First, the copyright clause. Crystal clear, utterly unambiguous. Chen Wei, social security number XXXXX, born January 15th, 1996, currently residing at my address, hereinafter referred to as the author, retains full and complete copyright to the work titled Echoes of Tomorrow in perpetuity throughout the universe. Second, the royalties clause. This was the kill shot. All royalties, earnings, profits, advances, subsidiary rights payments, and any other form of compensation derived from the work Echoes of Tomorrow shall be paid in full to Chen Wei, social security number XXX XXXXXX. Payment shall be made to account my bank account number via direct deposit or check made out to Chen Wei only. These rights are non-transferable, non-negotiable, and irrevocable. Third, the rights clause. Chen Wei retains all rights to the work, including, but not limited to, publication rights, derivative rights, film and television rights, audio rights, electronic rights, translation rights, merchandising rights, and any other rights whether now known or hereafter invented. These rights may be licensed by Chen Wei to third parties, but ownership remains solely with Chen Wei. And finally, the clever part, the pseudonym clause. Buried in the middle of the contract, easy to overlook. The work may be published under a pseudonym or alternative name at the discretion of the copyright holder. Such use of an alternative name does not transfer any rights or ownership of the work. She'll see what she wants to see, Margaret said, tapping the clause with one manicured nail. She'll think this means she can put her name on it. And technically, it does allow that, but it doesn't give her any ownership. The minute she tries to claim the work as hers, she's committed fraud. What if she actually reads the whole contract? People like your sister never read contracts thoroughly. They skim for the advance amount and the publication date. The rest is just legal jargon they assume their lawyer has vetted. Margaret paused. But even if she does read it, the pseudonym clause is vague enough that she might genuinely believe it allows her to publish under her own name. That's not a crime by itself. The crime is when she claims authorship, when she signs documents stating she wrote it, when she profits from it while knowing the truth. And the royalty is going to my name? My social security number? That's the beauty of it. Most people, when they're committing fraud, are sloppy. They'll forge documents, create fake paper trails, but they'll also want some kind of legitimate-looking contract to show publishers. She'll use this one. And she won't notice or won't care that the money isn't going to her. Why wouldn't she care? Margaret smiled. Because people like your sister care more about fame than money. Oh, they want the money too, but the validation, the recognition, the ego boost of being a published author, that's what they're really after. The money is almost secondary. She'll be so focused on seeing her name on the cover that she won't carefully check whose name is on the royalty checks. That seems like a big assumption. I've been doing this for 30 years, Ms. Chen. I've seen it happen dozens of times. Plagiarists are narcissists. They're not detail-oriented, they're big-picture thinkers who believe they deserve success and are just taking a shortcut to what should already be theirs. Your sister sounds like a textbook case. I hoped she was right. We notarized the contract on April 15th, 2019. I signed in triplicate, witnessed by two of Margaret's paralegals. She filed one copy with her office. I kept one copy in a safety deposit box I rented specifically for this purpose. And the third copy, that one I left in a folder on my desk, clearly visible. Now, Margaret said at our final meeting, you need to set the stage at that. Make the manuscript accessible. Make your sister think she's being clever by stealing it. And most importantly, establish a clear timeline of creation that proves you wrote it. I have a plan for that too. I did, God. Help me, I did. On May 1st, 2019, I enrolled in the MFA program at Columbia University. Not the full-time program, I couldn't afford that and didn't have time to apply, but the continuing education track, which offered intensive workshops and seminars open to non-matriculated students. It cost a fortune, but I paid for it with the last of my savings and a credit card I'd opened specifically for this purpose. In my previous life, I'd worked as a junior copywriter at a mid-tier marketing agency. Boring work, but stable. This time, I kept the job but devoted every spare moment to the workshop. The instructor was Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, a Nigerian-American novelist who'd been shortlisted for the Booker Prize and taught with the kind of rigor that made students either thrive or quit. I'd researched her extensively. In my previous life, she'd been one of the few established authors who'd publicly questioned Melissa's meteoric rise, wondering in a literary journal whether the writing was perhaps too polished for a debut, suggesting either extensive editorial intervention or other possibilities. I submitted the first 50 pages of Echoes of Tomorrow for workshop in mid-May. The feedback was electric. "This is extraordinary," Patricia said during the session, her eyes bright with excitement. "The voice is so assured, so unique. Where did this come from?" "I've been working on it for 2 years," I lied. Not a complete lie. I had been working on it, just in a different timeline. "The time loop conceit could feel gimmicky, but you've grounded it in such emotional truth. The protagonist's desperation to save herself, to fix past mistakes, it's haunting." Over the next 6 months, I workshopped the entire manuscript, 50 pages at a time. Each session was recorded with permission for educational purposes. Each submission was emailed to Patricia and my fellow workshop members with timestamps. I created a paper trail that would be impossible to dispute, and I made sure Melissa knew all about it. "Guess what?" I said during our monthly Sunday dinner at our parents' house in early June. Melissa had just arrived, late as always, fresh from a work event. She looked stunning in a designer dress I recognized from Instagram, her hair and makeup perfect. "What?" she asked absently, checking her phone. "I got into a writing workshop at Columbia." That got her attention. Her eyes flicked up, sharp and assessing. "Columbia? I didn't know you applied to their MFA program." "It's not the full program, just continuing ed. But it's with Patricia Okonkwo, the author of The Memory Keeper." "Never heard of her." Of course she hadn't. Melissa didn't read unless it was for book club with her fellow marketing executives, and even then, she usually just skimmed the summary online. "She's amazing," I continued, letting enthusiasm color my voice. "And I'm workshopping my novel in her class." "The science fiction thing you're always talking about?" "It's not science fiction thing, it's speculative literary fiction. There's a difference." Melissa waved her hand dismissively. "Whatever, sounds fun." But I saw the flicker of interest in her eyes. The calculation. Our mother bustled in from the kitchen with a tray of dumplings. "Melissa, tell your sister about your promotion." And just like that, the conversation shifted. Melissa's new title at the agency, her expanded team, the major clients she was courting. I smiled and nodded and praised her success, all while watching her file away the information about my novel. I invited her to visit my apartment 2 weeks later. "I want to show you the first section," I said over the phone. "Get your opinion. You're so good at understanding what people respond to." "Wei, I'm really busy. Please. It would mean so much to me." She sighed. "Fine. Saturday afternoon?" "Perfect." She arrived at 2 p.m., 45 minutes late, swept into my tiny studio like she was gracing a peasant's cottage with her royal presence. I'd cleaned obsessively, bought nice cheese and crackers from Trader Joe's, made sure my laptop was prominently displayed on my desk with the manuscript file open. "God, this place is tiny," she said, looking around. "How do you live like this?" "It's affordable." "Barely. You should move back in with Mom and Dad. Save up for something decent." "I like my independence." She shrugged, already bored. We made small talk while I showed her the neighborhood from my window, pointing out the bodega where I got coffee, the park where I sometimes wrote. All the while, I watched her eyes drift back to my laptop. "So," she finally said. "The novel?" I pulled up the file. "Okay, so it's about a woman named Arya who discovers she's living in a time loop. Every time she dies, she wakes up 5 years earlier. And each time, she tries to prevent her own death, but she keeps making the same mistakes." I walked her through the opening chapters, reading passages aloud, explaining my vision. Melissa listened with half her attention, checking her phone periodically. "It's interesting," she said when I finished. Not enthusiastic. Not dismissive, just noting it. You think people would want to read something like this? Maybe. Time loop stuff is popular right now, and the emotional angle is good. People love stories about second chances. I'm workshopping it at Columbia. Patricia thinks it could be really commercial. That's great, Way. She stood up, already reaching for her purse. I should get going, meeting friends for drinks in the village. Let me print you a copy of the first few chapters. You can read them on the train. Oh, you don't have to, but I was already at my printer, feeding in paper. Printed 25 pages and handed them to her. She took them reluctantly. Thanks. I'll try to read them this week. That would mean so much. After she left, I checked my laptop's access logs. She'd been on it for 3 minutes while I was in the bathroom. Long enough to copy files. Long enough to steal. I smiled. Phase 1 complete. Over the next 8 months, I lived a double life. By day, I was Wei Chen, underpaid copywriter and struggling writer. By night, I was a woman on a mission, carefully orchestrating every detail of my sister's downfall. I continued the workshop with Patricia, building an undeniable record of authorship. I shared excerpts with classmates via email, asking for feedback. I posted about my writing process on a private blog, documenting my progress with timestamps and screenshots. I even submitted 2 chapters to a literary magazine under a pseudonym. They were rejected, but the submission record existed, dated and verifiable. All the while, I kept Melissa updated, sent her cheerful texts about my progress, called her to discuss particularly tricky scenes. I can't figure out how to make the antagonist sympathetic, I said during one call in September. Like, she's stealing the protagonist's life, but I want readers to understand why she's doing it. Maybe she's desperate, Melissa suggested. Like, maybe she needs success to prove something to her family. That's good. That's really good. Can I use that? Sure. I wondered if she heard the irony. Probably not. In October, I invited her to my workshop reading. 5 students were presenting excerpts from their works in progress at a small bookstore in the West Village. I was reading the climactic scene where Arya confronts her sister, the person who's been causing her deaths in each timeline. Melissa came late, slipped into the back. I saw her face when I read the confrontation scene. The moment when Arya realizes her own sister has been killing her out of jealousy and greed. Melissa's expression was unreadable. After the reading, during the Q&A, someone asked where I'd gotten the idea. From life, I said, meeting Melissa's eyes across the room. Sometimes the people closest to you are capable of the worst betrayals. She left before the reception. In November, my computer crashed. I'd backed everything up, of course. Multiple cloud services, external drives, email attachments to myself. But I made a big show of panic, posting on social media about the crash, lamenting the loss of my files. Melissa called within an hour. I saw your post. Did you lose everything? Most of it. I'm trying to recover files, but I let my voice break convincingly. The novel might be gone. That's terrible, Wei. I'm so sorry. I should have backed it up better. Do you have any printed copies or emails? Some, not everything. I paused. Wait, I sent you those chapters back in June, right? Do you still have them? A beat of silence. I'm not sure. Let me check. If you do, can you send them back to me? It's not much, but it's something. Of course. She never sent them, because she'd never had a physical copy. She'd stolen the digital file and didn't want to admit it, but the important thing was the record. I'd asked her for help, she'd refused. More evidence of her bad faith. In December, I announced I'd recovered most of the files from the cloud, posted happily about it on social media. Melissa didn't comment. In January 2020, I finished the manuscript. All 95,000 words of it, polished to perfection. I celebrated with my workshop friends at a dive bar in Brooklyn, let them toast to my success. Are you going to start querying agents? Patricia asked. Eventually, I want to do one more revision pass first. But I wasn't going to query agents, not yet. I was waiting for Melissa. It happened in February. I'd gone to visit our parents for the weekend, left my laptop at home by accident. When I returned Sunday night, I could tell someone had been in my apartment. Nothing obvious. Melissa was good at covering her tracks, but small things were different. My desk chair was at the wrong angle. My laptop was slightly to the left of where I always kept it. I checked the access logs. She'd been on it for 20 minutes. The manuscript file had been opened, copied to a USB drive. I sat in the dark and smiled. Now we waited. A month passed, 2 months. I started to worry that I'd miscalculated, that Melissa had looked at the manuscript and decided it wasn't worth stealing. Then in April, she texted me, having drinks with a friend who works in publishing. Any chance you'd want me to mention your novel? My heart raced. That would be amazing. Thank you. What's it called again? Echoes of Tomorrow. Right. Send me a 1-paragraph summary I can pitch. I sent her the summary I'd perfected over months of workshop. The hook that had made Patricia gasp, the premise that had made my classmates demand to read the full manuscript. Melissa wrote back, "Great, I'll mention it." She didn't mention it. She submitted it. I know because I'd hired a private investigator, another expense, on my growing credit card debt, but necessary. He tracked her movements, her communications. In May 2020, she'd taken a long lunch with an editor at Penguin Random House. 2 weeks later, she'd submitted a manuscript to that same editor, Echoes of Tomorrow by Melissa Chen. I wanted to scream, wanted to rage, wanted to call her and expose her immediately. Instead, I went to my safety deposit box and retrieved the contract. Looked at my signature, Margaret Jo's notary stamp, the date, April 15th, 2019, over a year before Melissa submitted. I called Margaret. She took the bait. "You're sure?" I told her about the submission, the editor, the timeline. "Good," Margaret said. "Now you need to establish your own claim, independently, before she signs anything." I already have a plan. I did. I'd been working on it for months. Through a connection from my workshop, a classmate whose sister worked at a small but respected sci-fi press called Nebula House, I'd gotten my manuscript read by their acquisitions editor. They'd loved it. In June 2020, they offered me a contract. The advance was small, $5,000. The publication timeline was long, 18 months minimum. But the contract was solid, legitimate, and most importantly, it legally established me as the author of Echoes of Tomorrow. I signed on June 15th, 2020. 2 weeks later, Melissa called with news. "Wei, I have something to tell you." "What's up?" I wrote a novel." I let the silence stretch. "You wrote a novel?" I know, I never mentioned it. I wanted to finish it first, make sure it was good before I said anything. But Wei, I got a book deal with Penguin Random House. I made myself gasp. "Melissa, that's incredible." "The advance is really good. Like, really good. 6 figures. 6 figures for a first novel? They think it's going to be big. They're already talking about marketing, maybe a book tour." "What's it about?" A pause. "It's hard. To explain, science fiction, kind of, about time loops and second chances." My blood turned to ice. Not because I was surprised, I'd known this was coming, but because hearing her say it, hearing her claim my story, my words, my heart poured onto pages, it was still a knife in my chest. "That's amazing," I managed. "I can't wait to read it." The publication date is set for March 2022. It feels like forever from now. March 2020. 18 months. My publication date with Nebula House was December 2021, 3 months earlier. "I'm so proud of you," I lied. "Thanks, Wei, that means a lot." After we hung up, I sat in my apartment and cried. Not from sadness, from rage. From vindication. From the sweet, terrible knowledge that I had her exactly where I wanted her. Then I called Margaret. "She signed with Penguin Random House." "For your book?" "For my book." "And you signed with?" "Nebula House. 3 months before her publication date." "Perfect. Now we wait. Let her have her moment. Let her think she's won. And when her book comes out, when she's at the height of her success, we strike. We strike, Margaret agreed. The next 18 months were agony. I watched Melissa's star rise in real time. She announced her book deal on social media in July 2020. The response was overwhelming. Her 50,000 Instagram followers celebrated, shared, congratulated. She'd been building her personal brand for years through her marketing job, posting aspirational content about work-life balance, productivity, success. Now she was adding author to her bio. She quit her marketing job in September to write full-time. Never mind that she'd already written the book. She needed time to revise and work with her editor. She posted photos of herself in cafes with her laptop, looking pensive. Posted quotes about the writing process. Started a newsletter about creativity and pursuing your dreams. I felt physically ill every time I saw her posts, but I liked them, commented supportively, played the role of the supportive younger sister. In October, I signed the publishing contract with Nebula House. Small press, small budget, but they were enthusiastic about the book. My editor, Karen, was a science fiction fan who genuinely loved the story. "This is special," she told me during our first phone call. "The way you've woven the time loop mechanics with the emotional journey. It's brilliant." "Thank you. We'll do our best with marketing, but I have to be honest. We don't have the budget of the big houses. This will be mostly grassroots. Word of mouth. That's fine. I just want it out there. We're aiming for December 2021. Does that work?" "Perfect." I didn't tell Melissa, didn't tell my parents, didn't tell anyone except Margaret and my closest friends from the workshop. In January 2021, Melissa's book got its cover reveal. A gorgeous illustrated cover from a well-known designer, the title in elegant script, Echoes of Wassat. Tomorrow by Melissa Chen. My words, her name. The pre-orders opened. Book bloggers and book talk influencers started posting about it. Melissa sent out advance reader copies to her network. The early buzz was incredible. "The next big thing in speculative fiction," one review said. "A stunning debut that will leave you breathless," said another. My phone rang constantly with family members congratulating me on Melissa's success. "Your sister is going to be famous," my mother gushed. "Isn't it wonderful, my son?" my father added. "I always knew Melissa was special," my aunt said. I smiled and agreed and felt my hatred crystallize into something pure and perfect and sharp. In June 2021, I received my advance reader copies from Nebula House. The cover was simple, a hand-drawn illustration of a woman standing at a crossroads, timelines spiraling around her. The title in clean, sans-serif font, Echoes of Tomorrow by Chen Wei. I held it in my hands and cried, happy tears this time. This was my book. My name. My truth. Karen called to check in. "We're getting some early interest from reviewers. A few sci-fi blogs want to feature it." "That's great." "There's one thing, though. A reviewer mentioned that there's another book coming out with the same title next year, published by Penguin Random House." "Really?" I made my voice surprised. "What a coincidence." "Same title, similar concept apparently. Time loops. We might want to consider changing yours." "No," I said firmly. "Keep the title. It's important." "Are you sure? It might cause confusion in the market." "I'm sure. That title is mine." Karen hesitated, then agreed. "Okay, it's your call." In September 2021, Melissa's promotional tour began in earnest. She did podcast interviews, Instagram lives, a feature in Publishers Weekly. She talked about her creative process, how the idea had come to her in a dream, how she'd spent years crafting the story. I listened to every interview, documented every lie. In October, she did a particularly galling interview with a popular book podcast. "The protagonist, Arya, is very personal to me," Melissa said, her voice earnest. "She's struggling with family dynamics, feeling overlooked and undervalued. I really connected with that sense of being in someone's shadow." The host asked, "Who were you in the shadow of?" "My younger sister, actually. She's incredibly talented, a writer too." Growing up, I always felt like I had to measure up to her creativity. I nearly threw my phone across the room. My sister, my story, my protagonist who was literally based on my experience of being in her shadow. And she'd twisted it, appropriated even my pain and resentment, and claimed it as her own. I called Margaret. She's claiming the story is autobiographical. Even better, the more she invests in the lie, the harder she'll fall when the truth comes out. I don't know how much longer I can wait. December. Your book comes out in December. Then we have proof of prior publication. Then we can move. December 2021 came with agonizing slowness. My book was published on December 14th. Release day was small but sweet. A reading at a sci-fi bookstore in Brooklyn, about 30 people in attendance. My workshop friends came. Patricia came, Karen and the Nebula House team came. I read the opening chapter, the scene where Arya wakes up in her younger body, realizing she's been given a second chance. My voice shook with emotion, but not because I was nervous. Because this was real. This was mine. The applause was warm and genuine. "How does it feel to be a published author?" Patricia asked afterward. "Like coming home," I said. Reviews trickled in over the next few weeks. Positive, enthusiastic, mostly from genre blogs and small publications. The sales were modest, about 2,000 copies in the first month. Nothing spectacular. Nothing that would make waves in the larger publishing industry, but it was enough to establish copyright, publication date, authorship. Enough to build my case. I sent a copy to Melissa for Christmas, wrapped it carefully, included a card. "To Melissa, my first published novel. Thank you for always believing in me. Love, Way." She texted me on Christmas morning. "Got your book. So proud of you. Can't wait to read it." She never mentioned it again. On New Year's Eve, I met with Margaret. "She published in December," Margaret said, reviewing her notes. "You published in December. Same title, same story. What happens now?" "Now we wait for March. Let her book come out. Let it get big. The bigger the better, actually. More sales, more publicity, more money." She smiled grimly. "The higher they rise, the harder they fall." "And then?" "Then we file suit. Copyright infringement, fraud, unjust enrichment. We go after her for every penny she's made plus damages. We go after the publisher, too. They did due diligence. They should have caught this." "Will we win?" "Way. We have publication dates, contracts, workshop records, emails, timestamps, witness testimony from your entire MFA class, and a notarized contract that predates her involvement with the book by over a year. She signed a publishing contract for a work she didn't own. She claimed authorship of a book that was already published under your name. She committed fraud on a massive scale, and we can prove every bit of it." So yes, we'll win. The question is, how much we'll win? I thought about that. I don't want just money. I want everyone to know what she did. They will. Trust me, when this hits the courts, it's going to be news. Big news. March 2022 arrived. Melissa's book dropped on March 15th, exactly 3 years to the day after my rebirth, though no one but me knew that symmetry. The launch was spectacular. Release party at a trendy Manhattan bookstore, catered by a celebrity chef, attended by influencers and media personalities. Melissa wore a designer dress and held court like a queen. I wasn't invited. "Family only tonight," she'd said when I'd asked. "You understand." Our parents were there, of course, posted photos on Facebook of Melissa signing books, giving her speech, basking in glory. I stayed home and watched the Instagram stories, each one a dagger. The book debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Within a week, it had sold 100,000 copies. Within 2 weeks, a Netflix adaptation was announced. Within 3 weeks, Melissa was being called the voice of her generation and the future of speculative fiction. I documented everything, saved every article, every review, every sales figure. On April 1st, April Fool's Day, appropriately, Margaret and I filed the lawsuit, Chenwei by Melissa Chen and Penguin Random House Inc., copyright infringement, fraud, breach of contract, unjust enrichment. We sued for all royalties from Melissa's publication, statutory damages, punitive damages, legal fees, and a court order to cease all publication and promotion of the work. The filing hit the news that evening. Best-selling author sued by sister for plagiarism. Publishers Weekly. Debut novelist faces copyright lawsuit. The New York Times. Echoes of Tomorrow. Author accused of stealing sister's work. Variety. My phone exploded. Melissa called 17 times. I didn't answer. My parents called. What are you doing? Have you lost your mind? Read the lawsuit, I said calmly. Bitus. Look at the evidence, then call me back. I hung up. Social media erupted. The story had everything: family drama, literary scandal, a David versus Goliath lawsuit. Echoes. Tomorrow trended on Twitter. Book Twitter was particularly vicious, split between people defending Melissa and people condemning her. Within 24 hours, Melissa issued a statement through her lawyer. The allegations made by my sister are completely false and motivated by jealousy. I am the sole author of Echoes of Banas. Tomorrow. This lawsuit is frivolous and will be dismissed. I will be pursuing legal action against Wei Chen for defamation and harassment. Margaret had prepared me for this. Standard response. Deny everything. Counterattack. Doesn't matter. We have the receipts. The receipts were devastating. First, we submitted the copyright registration for Echoes of Tomorrow by Chen Wei, dated July 2020, 8 months before Melissa even signed her publishing contract. Second, we submitted my publishing contract with Nebula House, dated June 2020. Third, we submitted the publication data showing my book had been released in December 2021, 3 months before Melissa's version. Fourth, and this was the kill shot, we submitted the royalties contract, the one Melissa had signed, the one that clearly stated all royalties went to Chen Wei, legal name, social security number, bank account specified. When this hit the media, the response was nuclear. Breaking. Lawsuit reveals best-selling. Author signed away all royalties to sister. Plagiarism scandal deepens. Author Melissa Chen may have signed fraudulent contract. Who really wrote Echoes of Tomorrow? Timeline suggests sister Wei Chen published first. Penguin Random House went into crisis mode. They suspended all marketing for the book, started their own internal investigation. Within a week, they'd discovered what Margaret had predicted. Melissa had submitted the royalties contract I'd written as proof she had rights to the work. She'd signed a contract that gave her zero ownership and all proceeds to me, then claimed the work was hers. The publisher's lawyers must have been apoplectic. They called Margaret, asked for a meeting. They want to settle, Margaret told me. Already? They're looking at massive liability. They published a book without properly vetting the copyright. They paid in advance to someone who wasn't the actual rights holder. They promoted and sold a plagiarized work. They're exposed on multiple fronts. What are they offering? Full restitution of all royalties paid to Melissa, plus damages. They'll pull all remaining copies from circulation. They'll issue a public apology. And they'll offer you a new contract to publish the book under your name. What about Melissa? They're cutting her loose. She defrauded them too. They're suing her to recover the advance and damages. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow. I want to go to trial, I said. Margaret looked surprised. Wei, they're offering you everything. Why risk trial? Because I want her to have to testify. I want her to have to stand up in court and try to justify what she did. I want it on record. That's vindictive. Yes, I agreed, and it is. Margaret studied me for a long moment. All right, we'll reject the settlement, but understand trials are unpredictable. We could lose. We won't lose. You said so yourself. I said we'll probably win. Probably isn't certainly. I'll take that risk. The discovery process was brutal for Melissa. Margaret's team pulled everything. Every email Melissa had sent to her editor, every revision she'd submitted, every interview she'd done claiming authorship. And they found the smoking gun. Her original submission email to Penguin Random House dated May 2020, where she'd attached my manuscript file, the one she'd stolen from my laptop in February. The file metadata showed it had been created on my computer, showed my username as the author, showed creation date of March 2019, last modified April 2019. There was no plausible deniability left. Melissa's lawyer tried to argue that we'd collaborated, that she'd helped me write it, that it was a joint work. But I had the workshop records, emails to classmates with chapters attached, time-stamped blog posts documenting my solo writing process. Patricia Okonkwo submitted an affidavit testifying that I'd workshopped the entire manuscript in her class, that Melissa had never been present or mentioned as a collaborator. 10 of my former classmates submitted affidavits saying the same. Melissa tried to claim I'd given her permission to publish it under her name. But I had her texts asking if I wanted her to mention my novel to her publishing contact, her emails where she'd never acknowledged having read the full manuscript. And of course, there was the contract. The beautiful, airtight contract that she'd signed that proved she knew the royalties belonged to me, not her. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I attended every day, sitting behind Margaret at the plaintiff's table, watching Melissa squirm under examination. The prosecutor was merciless. Ms. Chen, when did you first read the manuscript for Echoes of Tomorrow? I don't remember exactly, sometime in 2020. But your sister claims she showed you portions of it in June 2019. Do you recall that? Vaguely. Just vaguely. She printed pages for you, gave them to you to read on the train. I might have glanced at them. Did you read them? I don't remember. You don't remember reading 25 pages your sister printed specifically for you? It was a long time ago. It was 2.5 years ago. And you claim to have written a 95,000-word novel during that time, but you can't remember reading 25 pages your sister gave you? I was busy. Busy stealing her manuscript? Objection. Sustain. Rephrase, counselor. Ms. Chen, when did you write Echoes of Tomorrow? Over the course of 2020 and 21. All of it? All 95,000 words? Yes. And where did you write it? At home mostly, sometimes in cafes. Do you have drafts? Earlier versions showing your writing process? I didn't save them. I revised as I went. No drafts at all? No outlines? No notes? I work differently than other writers. Indeed. Ms. Chen, do you recognize this contract? The royalties contract was entered into evidence. Melissa's face went pale. Yes. This is your signature, correct? Yes. And this contract states that all royalties for Echoes of Tomorrow are to be paid to Chen Wei, social security number listed, bank account listed, not to you. Do you see that? I must have signed it by mistake. By mistake? You reviewed this contract with your agent and your lawyer before submitting it to Penguin Random House, did you not? Yes. And you signed it, notarized it, submitted it as proof you had rights to the work. I thought You thought what, Ms. Chen? That you could publish your sister's book under your name and keep all the money for yourself? No, I thought the pseudonym clause meant... The pseudonym clause allows for publication under an alternative name. It doesn't transfer ownership. It doesn't change who receives royalties. You're a smart woman, Ms. Chen. You work in marketing. You understand contracts. How could you possibly misunderstand something this clear? Had no good answer. The defense tried to make me look vindictive, tried to paint this as a family squabble that had gotten out of hand, but the evidence was overwhelming. Publication dates, copyright registrations, workshop records, the contract, the file metadata, and then there was my testimony. Ms. Wei Chen, my lawyer asked, why did you let your sister publish your book? I looked directly at Melissa. Because I wanted her to have everything she thought she wanted. The fame, the recognition, the book tours and the interviews and the bestseller lists. I wanted her to feel what it was like to be successful, to be celebrated, to be important. Why? Because I wanted her to know exactly what she was losing when I took it all back. The courtroom was silent. That seems vindictive. It is vindictive. She stole 3 years of my life. She stole my words. She stole my dreams. And I caught myself before saying, in my first life, in my darkest moments, I felt like she'd stolen my soul. So yes, I wanted revenge. I wanted her to feel the same pain I felt watching someone else live my life. Do you regret it? No, I regret that it was necessary. I regret that my own sister valued fame more than family, but I don't regret protecting my work. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They found in my favor on all counts. Copyright infringement, Melissa was ordered to pay all royalties she'd received from the publication, $847,000, plus statutory damages of $150,000. Fraud, additional damages of $500,000. The book was to be immediately pulled from all distribution channels. All existing copies were to be destroyed or stickered with a correction noting originally published by Chen Wei. Penguin Random House settled separately, paying me an undisclosed sum, $2 million, and offering me a new contract to publish Echoes of Tomorrow under my own name with a massive marketing budget. The verdict made national news, as us, sister wins. Plagiarism lawsuit, awarded nearly $1.5 million. Debut author's incredible fall, how Melissa Chen lost everything. The plagiarism case that shocked publishing. The think pieces came next, dozens of them analyzing every aspect of the case. The Atlantic ran a long-form piece titled The Perfect Revenge, how Chen Wei let her sister steal her life then took it back. It detailed everything, the sophisticated trap I'd laid, the patience I'd shown, the meticulous documentation, the calculated decision to let Melissa publish first, get famous, earn money, and then lose it all. Chen Wei's revenge, the article concluded, was not just sweet, it was literary. She gave her sister exactly what she wanted: fame, recognition, the spotlight, and then she let her sister discover that none of it came with the reward she'd actually been after. The money, the security, the success. Wei kept all of that for herself, while Melissa Chen will be remembered only as a fraud. The article went viral, became one of the Atlantic's most read pieces of the year. My book sales exploded. Everyone wanted to read the real version. Nebula House could barely keep up with demand. Within 2 months, they'd sold 500,000 copies of the original December 2021 edition. Penguin Random House published their version, my version, with my name properly credited, in November 2022. It debuted at #1 on the New York Times list, sold 2 million copies in the first year. The Netflix adaptation moved forward with proper credit this time. I consulted on the screenplay, went to the premiere, walked the red carpet. Melissa wasn't there. She'd moved to Portland, changed her name to her middle name, Catherine, tried to disappear. She'd filed for bankruptcy after the judgment. Lost her apartment, lost her friends, lost everything. Our parents eventually apologized. It took them 6 months and intervention from a family therapist, but they finally admitted they'd been wrong. Wrong to believe. Melissa without question. Wrong to dismiss my accusations. Wrong to prioritize one daughter over the other for so many years. I accepted their apology, but I didn't forgive them. Not really. Some wounds are too deep. I bought a house, not a penthouse in Manhattan. I didn't want to be Melissa. I wanted to be myself. I bought a beautiful old brownstone in Brooklyn with a dedicated writing room overlooking a garden. Planted roses and lavender. Adopted a cat. Built a life that was mine. The money kept coming. Royalties from book sales, foreign rights, audiobook, merchandise. The Netflix series was a hit, spawned 2 more seasons. Each royalty check had my name on it. Chen Wei, legal name only. I wrote a second novel. This one was completely new, no cosmic do-over, no rebirth foreknowledge. Just me and my laptop and the words. It was a thriller about 2 sisters. One who takes everything, and one who finally learns to take it back. It hit the bestseller list too. I dedicated it to Melissa. For teaching me exactly what I'm capable of, thank you. She sent me an email after publication. The first communication we'd had since the trial. Wei, I'm dying, stage 4 cancer, 6 months, maybe less. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know you were right about everything. I stole your work because I was desperate to be something I wasn't. Smart, creative, important. I thought if I could just have that one success, that one moment of glory, it would fill the emptiness inside me. It didn't. It just made the emptiness bigger. I lost everything: my career, my reputation, my family, my self respect. I've spent the last year and a half working at a grocery store, living in a studio apartment, hiding from my own name. And you became exactly who you were always meant to be. I don't regret what happened to me. I regret what I did to you in our childhood. The stairs, I know you remember, I know you know it, wasn't an accident. I pushed you away, I killed you, or tried to, and somehow, impossibly, you came back. That's more than revenge. That's resurrection. I hope you've been happy. I hope every word you write brings you joy. I hope you never think of me except as a villain in your origin story. I'm not asking you to write back. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know you won. Completely. Utterly. Forever. And I'm glad you did. Melissa, I read it 3 times. Then I deleted it. I didn't need her confession. Didn't need her acknowledgement. Didn't need her redemption. I had my life, my work, my name on every book, every check, every success. That was enough, more than enough. I wrote for another 3 hours that day. A new story, a new world, new characters. The words flowed like they always did now, easily, joyfully, mine. Around 7 p.m., I took a break, poured a glass of wine, stood at my window overlooking the garden where the roses were blooming. My phone buzzed. A text from my editor at Penguin Random House. Netflix wants to do a limited series on your life. The lawsuit, the whole story. Interested? I smiled. Some people get 1 chance to tell their story. I'd gotten 2, and this time, every word would be mine. I typed back. Let's talk terms. And make sure the contract specifies that all royalties go to Chen Wei, legal name only. She sent back a laughing emoji. Obviously, I'll send the contract for review. I looked at the email notification that had popped up. The contract already in my inbox. I opened it, started reading carefully. Old habits, good habits. The royalties clause was perfect. All compensation shall be paid to Chen Wei, Social Security number XIXXXXX. I signed it, sent it back, poured another glass of wine, and toasted the sunset. 2 second chances, I said aloud, and to making them count. The cat jumped onto the windowsill, purring. I scratched behind her ears and watched the sky. Turn gold, then pink, then purple. 3 years ago, in this timeline, I'd been sitting in a cramped studio apartment wondering if I should hide my work or set a trap. I'd chosen the trap. Best decision I ever made. My phone rang. Patricia. Wei, did you see? They're doing a panel on literary fraud at the National Book Awards, and they want you on it. Me? You're the expert now. The woman who caught a plagiarist using her own contract against her. They want you to talk about protecting your work, documentation, all of it. I don't know. It's a spotlight, Wei. Use it. Tell your story. Help other writers protect themselves. She was right. Okay, I'll do it. Excellent. I'm proud of you, you know. Thanks, Patricia, for everything. If you hadn't taken me seriously in workshop, you took yourself seriously. That's what mattered. You valued your own work enough to fight for it. That's not something I can teach. After we hung up, I thought about that, about value, about worth, about knowing what you've created and refusing to let anyone take it from you. I opened my laptop, started a new document. The cursor blinked at me, patient and familiar. I'd been thinking about my next novel, something about identity, about names and ownership and the power of words. I started typing. The first thing they take is your name. Good opening. Strong. I kept going. Not violently, not all at once. They do it slowly, casually, like they're borrowing a sweater. Can I tell people I made this? They ask. And you say yes because you love them, because you trust them, because you think sharing is kindness. You don't realize until it's too late that some people don't borrow. They steal. They take your name, your work, your soul, and they wear it better than you ever could because they have no shame weighing them down. But here's the thing about thieves. They're careless. They don't read the fine print. They don't check who actually owns what. They've stolen. And when you're patient, when you're smart, you can make them sign their own confession. This is a story about names, about ownership, about revenge. This is a story about taking back what's yours. I wrote for hours, the words pouring out, the story taking shape. Another thriller, another sister story. But different this time, because this one wasn't about my life, it was about the pattern, the universal truth of betrayal and retribution. When I finally stopped, it was past midnight. 15,000 words, a solid start. I saved the file, backed it up to 3 different cloud services and an external drive. Paranoid? Maybe. Smart? Absolutely. I'd learned my lesson, twice. Before bed, I checked my email one more time. Another message from Margaret, now enjoying retirement in Florida. Saw the news about the Netflix series. Congratulations. You're going to be famous for being famous now. How does that feel? I wrote back. Strange. Good. Like I'm living someone else's life, except it's actually mine this time. She responded immediately. That's the best kind of life. The earned kind. Sleep well, Wei. You've more than earned it. I did sleep well. For the first time in 3 years, in 6 years if you counted both lifetimes, I slept without nightmares, without anxiety, without the sick feeling of watching someone else live my dreams. When I woke up, sun was streaming through my bedroom window. The cat was curled up at my feet. My phone showed messages from friends, from my agent, from readers who loved my books. I made coffee, sat in my writing room, opened my laptop. The cursor blinked. I smiled and started writing. Echoes of Tomorrow went on to sell 5 million copies worldwide. Won the Nebula Award and the Hugo. The Netflix series won an Emmy. I did TED Talks and keynote speeches and writing workshops. And every single royalty check, every award, every acknowledgement had my name on it. Chen Wei, legal name only. Forever. 5 years after the trial, I published my 5th novel. It won the Pulitzer. In my acceptance speech, I thanked a lot of people. My editor, my agent, Patricia, Margaret, my workshop friends, my readers. I didn't thank Melissa, but I thought about her. Wondered if she was watching. Wondered if she was still alive. I'd never responded to her email, never checked. I decided I didn't care. She was a ghost, a footnote. The villain who'd made my hero's journey necessary. And I was the hero, finally, fully, indisputably. The woman who'd died for her words and come back to claim them. The writer who'd set the perfect trap and sprung it at the perfect moment. The sister who'd won. I went home that night with the Pulitzer in my bag, heavy and real in mine. Put it on the shelf next to my other awards. Poured champagne, toasted myself. To Chen Wei, Isai, I said, who lived twice and wrote it all down. The cat meowed in agreement. I laughed, opened my laptop, started. Writing my next book? The cursor blinked, waited. I had words to write, stories to tell, a life to live, and this time, every single bit of it belonged to me.